I went back and I listened to Russell Wilson's 2 press conferences at the end of the year. First off, the one that he did after the loss to the Los Angeles Rams, 2 hours after the game, he finally comes out. He doesn't look particularly happy. Why would he be? And then, of course, last week, where it seems like he was on vacation, doing a 1-hour press conference that was fraught with technical issues and pauses and hiccups, and Russ asking, hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me? But after that loss to the Rams, Russ said exactly what he wants out of the next offensive coordinator, and we've all been trying to piece it together. I don't know if this is the end-all, be-all, but Russ wants pace.
Teams know that we throw it, down the field well and all that kind of stuff. But I think also too that the teams also what they fear is our pace, the tempo, and and all that. I think that it's like I think you all know, but like when the game's on the line, it's 2 minutes in the game or whatever. I think teams obviously fear that because of the feeling of me going and all that stuff. And I think that's something that I think along the way that you can kind of lose track of a little bit. And I think we kind of lost track of that maybe along the way. I think that could have helped.
He's trying to soften it at the end. Maybe along the way it could have helped. But you can tell that he thinks that there wasn't enough pace last season, period. Is that on Brian Schottenheimer? Is that on Pete Carroll? I suppose we'll find out that answer with whoever they end up hiring as their next offensive coordinator. I'm not sold that pace makes an offense better. That going no huddle all game is all of a sudden going to turn the Seahawks offense into an unstoppable juggernaut a la the Kansas City Chiefs. But if you take a look at some of the things that the Seahawks have been doing, some of the people that they have been interviewing, you can understand why you have seen as many Chargers coaches in the mix. Because I thought to myself, okay, well, how do you measure pace? Football Outsiders actually does a very good job of measuring pace among NFL teams. And the Los Angeles Chargers were 5th in the NFL this past season in terms of getting the football to the line of scrimmage in situations where they're not down by 10 points and getting plays off. Would that make the Seahawks offense better? Again, I'm not sold on that. But I think that's what the Seahawks are going to have to do to make Russ happy. We'll see if that's actually something that they go about doing. If you're just tuning in right now, the newest candidate for the Seahawks as far as their next offensive coordinator is one Joe Lombardi. Joe Lombardi has an interesting history. This is a guy who is from here. He went to high school at Seattle Prep. His father was on the Seahawks coaching staff back in the day, Vince Lombardi Jr. And I don't know if this is a guy that is a favorite to be the next offensive coordinator of the Seahawks. He's worked with Drew Brees as a quarterback coach for much of the last decade, with a stint as the Detroit Lions play caller in the middle, but he only lasted a year and a half in that gig after he won in, I think, 6th start. In 2015, they decided to let him go. But he does have a history of it. You look at most of the names, a lot of the names aren't particularly sexy. We've heard Anthony Lynn's name thrown in there. Well, you think about Anthony Lynn, what's the first thing you think about? You think about bad game management decisions. You don't really think about a sharp offensive mind. Shane Steichen on that same Chargers coaching staff. Pep Hamilton, who does have a lot of experience as, I think, an offensive coordinator. And of all the guys that I have heard the names of thus far, including that of Doug Peterson, who, of course, is not going to be coaching this year. And on top of that, other than Doug Peterson, you also heard Adam Case's name thrown into the mix. Ugh, gross. Pep is, I think, the guy that is better than those candidates. Now, we'll see if there's some other guys that get thrown into the mix, but I like Pep. And I like those guys on that Chargers staff because of the pace side of things. If you want to appease Russ, okay, that's a way to go about doing it. But again, I'm not sold. I mean, look at what Chip Kelly did with the Philadelphia Eagles. No huddle nonstop at the expense of the defense. It hurt. And if you ask any player who played for those Chip Kelly Eagles teams, they would probably tell you, yeah, we were tired, man. We were playing a whole other game compared to the rest of the teams in the NFL. They played 16. We played 17. One last point on the Seahawks offensive coordinator gig, and I hope that this is something that's wrapped up soon. But until it is wrapped up, this is the biggest question and I think the biggest story in Seattle sports. If someone tells you that this job is not a good job, get up and walk away. To quote Humongous from Mad Max 2. This is one of those fantastic jobs for any aspiring assistant coach to make the jump from coordinator to head coach. No matter what you might think of Pete and meddling, you get to call plays here, first off. And guess what happens when you're a coordinator? You get more money. So for people to say, oh, well, this job isn't desirable, it's a job with more money in a stable organization in a state with no income tax. So let's just look at it from the sheer, is this a job that can provide for me and my family? Cha-ching in every single way. You also get to work with Russell Bleeping Wilson, which is just such a home run, you would think, for any potential assistant coach that wants to jump from being that assistant coach to a head coach somewhere. And I mean, with the guys that you've seen recently, Nick Sirianni, the newest head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Zach Taylor, Arthur Smith, those guys who have risen the ranks so quickly. Don't you want to work with a great quarterback? You're going to get to do that. And whether you have issues with Russell Wilson maybe doing things that are off schedule or Pete Carroll stepping in from time to time, this is a great job. And I feel like anyone who is saying otherwise is just full of it.